A anime begins. We see two helpless girls are being brutally dragged away by a ruthless gang of thugs in a truly terrifying scene. One of the kidnappers panic and tries to scream a warning that one girl comes from a super powerful family, but the heartless leader instantly shuts him up, shouting at the poor girl to stay quiet and wait for her doom when all hope seems lost. And yet, in that suffocating moment, without any loud announcement or dramatic speech, a knight clad entirely in white armor suddenly appears behind them, and in a blink, with calm precision and terrifying strength, he cuts down half of the attackers standing before him. But just as the tension peaks, the story quietly pulls back a few days earlier, where we see this same knight waking up in the middle of a forest, disoriented and confused, leaves and dirt around him. And this knight is revealed to be the protagonist of the story, though he immediately feels something is off, because as he looks around, he realizes this world does not feel like his own, and when he looks down at himself, he notices he is wearing an incredibly heavy-looking suit of armor, even though strangely he feels no weight at all. And this armor is no ordinary gear, as it possesses resistance to light and fire, along with several supportive passive abilities, being the sacred armor of Saint Belinus itself, while its flowing cape, known as Twilight, resists darkness and slowly restores mana over time, and his shield grants immunity to status ailments depending on its level, and to complete it all, he carries a sword crackling with lightning energy, the sacred lightning sword called Kaladborg. And with all of this, the protagonist, named Visto, slowly becomes aware that he is somehow inside the very video game he used to play, a game called ARG, which is also the name he now finds himself tied to, and the only thing he clearly remembers is falling asleep while playing. So at first he wonders if this is nothing more than a dream, but the solid feel of the sword in his hand and the reality of the armor surrounding his body feel far too real to dismiss. And yet despite the heavy equipment, he feels no heat, no pressure, no exhaustion, and taking advantage of being alone in the forest, he decides to test his power by launching an attack he often used in the game. And when he swings, multiple trees are cut down at once, confirming just how overwhelming his strength truly is, and still wanting certainty. He tries magic next, casting fire magic with ease, and in that moment, any remaining doubt fades, making him realize this is not a dream at all. And as he thinks deeper, he recalls that his character class was a paladin with a secondary class as a priest. But as realization settles in, hunger suddenly hits him, and to eat food he knows he will need real currency, so he decides to search for a nearby town, attempting to use a portal ability that normally allows travel to previously visited locations. But since he does not yet fully understand his abilities here, the spell fails and leaves him awkwardly suspended in midair, forcing him to switch to another movement skill instead, an ability known in the game as dimensional movement. And when he focuses on a point and activates it, he instantly teleports there, though in this world it functions as a short-range teleport with almost no waiting time, making it extremely useful. And after moving ahead, he stops near a small stream and suddenly realizes that he is still carrying his skeleton avatar, which could become a serious problem since people in towns might react with fear or hostility, mistaking him for a demon or monster. So he chooses to stay low-key and quietly heads toward a village just a short distance away. And upon entering, he carefully observes his surroundings, passing through the marketplace and a tavern, noting that although the village looks medieval, it strangely lacks any strong magical or fantastical atmosphere. And instead of drawing attention, he slips into the alleyways to gather information, reminding himself that these back streets feel just like those back on Earth. And while hiding, he overhears a man speaking with a hooded girl, though the conversation reveals nothing useful except for the fact that the girl turns out to be an elf, and deciding his next step, he chooses to join a guild so he can take jobs and earn money, approaching the receptionist to request a mercenary license, but she immediately doubts him, assuming that anyone dressed in armor like his must be a knight. And with quick thinking, the protagonist smoothly lies, explaining that he still needs the license and that there is no need to question his reasons further. And although suspicious, the receptionist informs him that before receiving the license, he must pass a test, which involves hunting a target, whether it be a monster, a beast, or a bandit. And to prove completion, he must bring back evidence. So the protagonist heads out to hunt and successfully catches 2 boars, bringing him closer to qualifying, but still needing one more accomplishment. And while trying to earn a bit of money and find something to eat, a large orc suddenly bursts out from the bushes, and instead of fear, the protagonist feels excitement at seeing such a creature for the first time in this world. And without hesitation, he prepares himself, draws his his sword with calm confidence and with a single effortless strike slices the orc cleanly in half, after which he calmly turns back toward the village, his path forward now firmly set. With the proof from the hunt in hand, he heads back toward the village, but on the way his attention is pulled to something unsettling, because up ahead he notices a carriage under attack by bandits, and these are the same ruthless men mentioned at the very beginning of the story, the ones who slaughtered the guards without mercy and are now closing in on the young noble girl they were escorting, Lauren, along with her maid, and from a distance the protagonist stops and quietly studies the scene, hesitation flickering in his mind as he weighs whether to interfere or walk away. Yet the moment he realizes the bandits are about to do unspeakable things to Lauren, his doubt vanishes, and without warning, he appears behind them using dimensional movement, cutting down the ones in front of him cleanly in half, while the remaining bandits freeze in terror and try to flee, but he refuses to let them escape, unleashing a sword technique known as horn cut that sends out a violent wave of force, instantly catching the fleeing bandits and erasing them completely. And once the danger is gone, he approaches the shaken girls, who thank him with trembling voices, as the maid introduces herself as Rita, the loyal servant of Lauren from the powerful Libya family, thanking him again and asking whether he serves any feudal lord, to which he calmly replies that he does not, then gently tells them to get dressed properly while he takes care of the bodies, and using his magic, he burns the bandits' remains until nothing is left behind, choosing not to leave corpses abandoned even if they were criminals. And as he does this, he briefly reflects on how he feels no guilt over killing them, reasoning that perhaps it is because they were truly evil people. And once finished, he loots their belongings, taking some of their hair as proof and collecting the money from their pouches when Rita and Lauren, now properly dressed, approach him again to express their gratitude and ask him to escort them back to the Libya residence. And along the way, Rita thanks him yet again, while Lauren keeps silently watching him without looking away, making him slightly uneasy until Rita casually asks for his name and he introduces himself as Arg, and after parting ways, he returns to the guild to submit his completed request, astonishing the receptionist who cannot believe he finished everything in a single day. And while checking the items, she notices he forgot to take the runic stone from the orc, explaining that it is a valuable material used to forge weapons and tools found in beasts and monsters. So she returns the stone to him and officially hands him his mercenary license, granting him recognition as an adventurer, while also pointing out that the available requests are fairly simple unless he joins a mercenary group or guild for larger jobs. And when night falls, he uses the money he earned to order a private feast in his room, so his identity remains hidden, and after tasting the food of this world, he has no doubt he truly exists in another realm, one he wants to enjoy fully, already eager for tomorrow's adventure. And the next day, he heads out on a new request as a guard for a young girl named Marka, who wants to gather medicinal herbs, triggering a brief memory of when he accepted the job, and the guild clerk suggested he join a group to earn more money instead of guarding a child, but he deliberately chose a smaller task to avoid attention. And now, Marka offers him a cup of tea and thanks him sincerely for accepting, to which he casually responds that it's nothing and that herb gathering sounds interesting, and when she asks if they can leave immediately, he agrees without hesitation, following her as she happily dances and sings through the forest, until he asks whether the request is urgent, mentioning the possibility of aggressive boars with large tusks appearing. And when he questions her rush, Marka explains that her mother will be home soon and would surely stop her if she found out, asking him to keep it secret. And as they walk, she shares that herb gathering used to be her father's job before he passed away a year ago, leaving her mother to raise her alone, which is why she wants to help by collecting herbs. And hearing this, he quietly admires her kindness and noble heart, noting she is a very good child, but then he realizes they have gone quite deep into the forest. And when Marka excitedly calls him over to show him flowers called kokora that can heal small wounds and repel creatures when burned, he is impressed and tells her she sounds like a teacher, making her smile proudly as she explains she learned everything from her father. Then she points ahead, saying that further in lies a tree called Kobhumi, and as she moves forward, he suddenly stops her, sensing strange movement in nearby bushes, approaching cautiously and discovering a wounded baby fox with multiple tails, and when he reaches out to help, it bites him. Yet he calmly heals its injuries with magic, astonishing Marka, who says he looks like a priest, adding that the fox seems grateful, and when he tells the fox it can leave, it instead sits and stares at him, prompting Marka to suggest it might want to follow him and should be given a name, and after trying several names the fox rejects, he finally calls it Ponta, which the fox accepts. And on the way back toward the village of Rata, a hunter warns others that he saw monsters that were not boars, while at the same time, Marka's mother, Sayona, arrives at the village gate only to be stopped by guards who ask whether she sent Marka on an errand, and when she denies it, worried that Marka should be home, the guard reassures her that Marka left in the morning with a knight. And later we see the protagonist reaching the Kobhumi tree with Marka and Ponta, noticing it stands on a slope and advising they find a safe halfway down, though Marka slides down effortlessly and points out how beautifully white and bloomed the tree is. But as she steps closer, a monster awakens, Ponta senses danger, and the protagonist shouts for Marka to stop just as a creature rises behind her, and moments later he identifies it as a basilisk, which immediately attacks Marka, forcing him to rescue her instantly as the basilisk spits poisonous breath that he dodges easily, then lashes its tongue and claws at him, all of which he deflects with ease, while jokingly wondering why it was given 6 legs when 2 were already dangerous enough, until the basilisk charges a petrifying attack that turns everything around it to stone like Medusa, but his shield blocks it completely, followed by another poisonous blast that he defends against, and seizing the opening as the monster retreats, he charges his paladin spell, Judgment, and defeats the basilisk, after which Marka excitedly says she will tell the villagers to celebrate, but he urgently asks her to keep the battle secret, suggesting that perhaps the boars were fleeing from this monster toward the village, and she replies that that sounds even scarier than giant tusked boars. And as he inspects the basilisk, he notices an unusual ring on one of its legs that vanishes without a trace, while Marka shivers and says it is terrifying, then hides behind him when she spots a boar in the distance, confirming those are the ones she meant, prompting him to hunt it down and bring it back as proof, and later he returns to the village with Marka and Ponta, dropping the boar and saying he only needs the tusks, giving the hide to Marka and sharing the meat with everyone, filling the village with joy and gratitude. And when Marka hears her name, she turns to see her mother Siona running toward her, hugging her tightly and crying with relief, asking why she went into the forest, and Marka apologetically explains she was just gathering medicinal herbs, asking for forgiveness, surprising Siona, and as tension builds, the protagonist steps forward, bowing and apologizing, asking Siona not to scold Marka and admitting it was his fault for not consulting her. But Siona gently says it's fine and everything is alright, as he continues to speak, his role in their lives now firmly etched into this new world he has chosen to walk through. He quietly thinks that he has never met a child who cared so deeply about her mother, and in that moment, Siona tightly hugs Marka, thanking her with a trembling voice, while nearby the village guard and the hunter approach the protagonist and cautiously ask whether he encountered any red-haired monsters, making him slightly tense as he calmly replies that they did not face anything he could not handle, assuring them there is nothing to worry about. And later, as the knight prepares to leave the village of Rata, he gently says goodbye to Marka and her family, while Marka's younger sister shyly offers him a crown of flowers, prompting him to kneel so she can place it on his head. And Marka then steps closer to bid farewell to Ponta, softly telling him to stay safe, as the protagonist turns to leave, only for Marka to ask whether they will meet again someday, and he answers with quiet confidence that they will see each other again in the future before walking away. And as the scene shifts, another knight is shown battling a basilisk and defeating it with visible difficulty, revealing that this basilisk also carried the same strange ring on one of its legs. And soon after, a blonde man reports to the general of the knights about the number of dead and injured, mentioning that another basilisk was found defeated by a single person in one decisive strike, shocking the general, who mutters that such a feat could only be done by a god or a demon. And returning to the protagonist, he is seen relaxing at an inn, drinking beer beside Ponta, while casually suggesting that tomorrow he might accept a more difficult request. And later that night, the story reveals the elf woman he once saw in the alley, now struggling against some kind of system or force oppressing her people, realizing she must grow stronger if she wants to save them. And she eventually reaches a cave where she encounters the protagonist, who along with Ponta effortlessly defeats a group of bandits, something he has been doing repeatedly over the past few days just to cover his expenses. And inside the cave, he discovers the wealth the bandits had accumulated, also noticing several cages left open, though he does not think much of it and simply takes all the gold. While elsewhere, Triton Diento is informed by his butler Sika about the failed assassination of Lauren, labeled a complete failure since although the guards were killed, a passing mercenary eliminated the attackers and ruined everything, causing Triton to scoff at the idea of a mercenary acting alone, dismissing it as unimportant since the bandits were weak, then shifting the topic to ask about the Eastern Empire's beasts sent to the lands of Luard, with Sika explaining that according to his contacts, the creatures are still experimental and the 2 basilisk units failed and were killed by a single individual. And when Sika asks why Prince Dakkeres is targeting Luard, Triton admits he does not know the exact reason, but suspects it is due to pressure from supporters in the Eastern Empire, believing that if the North falls under Dakkeres' rule, he could focus on invading the West, though it would not be easy because Luard is backed by Prince Segdit of the Western Empire, and to avoid trouble, they must keep their loyalty to Dakkeres hidden or Segd would crush them, after which Triton orders Sika to ensure their product reaches the market as soon as possible without Queen Yuriana discovering it, and finally asks about his son, with Sika replying that Ultron claimed he would personally protect the product. And as the story returns returns to the protagonist, he is seen leaving the cave with Ponta when he is suddenly attacked by the elf woman, narrowly dodging her strikes until he recognizes her as the same elf from the alley, and she aggressively interrogates him about the whereabouts of the children, while he struggles to block her attacks and explains that there is a misunderstanding and he wants to talk, but she accuses him of being a bandit, to which he responds that he looks nothing like them, though she insists he lowered himself to join them and keeps attacking, until she notices Ponta and abruptly stops, realizing he is a Ventu pulvis, a rare spiritual creature, leaving her confused as to why a white-tailed spirit fox would be with a bandit, since such creatures are extremely cautious and rarely approach elves, making it even stranger to see one with a human. And the protagonist explains that Ponta grew attached to him after he helped him, making him his companion now, causing the elf to finally understand he is not a bandit and apologize for attacking without warning. And he tells her that he has been dealing with bandits and asks what she is doing in this area, to which she replies that she heard these bandits were hunting elves, making him recall the open cages and sadly admit there were no elves left in the cave, prompting her to say she arrived too late and explain that elves sell for high prices in the slave market, and excited at meeting his first elf. He offers to help rescue the remaining elves, though she rejects his offer and leaves, yet he decides to help anyway, returning first to his lodging for a feast while thinking about the elf who did not even tell him her name. And the next day he uses dimensional movement to reach the elf forest, remarking that the guild said it should be full of elves, yet he cannot see a single one until Ponta alerts him to nearby voices saying an elf escaped, and while he does not find the elf he met before, he finds something even worse as an elf girl runs from a kidnapper, falls, and is grabbed by the hair, dragged back toward the others, as the man calls for someone named Uldren, apparently their leader, while Ultron mockingly complains that only having girls ruins the fun, then notices the elves glaring at him and threatens them, drawing his sword and pointing it at an elf girl's leg until she begs, though he laughs and cuts her anyway, ignoring his subordinate's warning that injured elves sell for less, silencing him by claiming he works for his father, ordering him to take the elf to the others. And from afar the protagonist watches the kidnappers, thinking of how to help but recalling the elf woman told him not to interfere, when suddenly she appears and swiftly defeats two kidnappers, declaring she finally found them, approaching the rest to reclaim the girls, making him happy to see her again, while one of Uldren's men recognizes her as a dark elf and suggests capturing her for a high price, though Ultron dismisses her attitude and tells them to do as they please, leading the kidnappers to surround her as she fights back fiercely, taking down several until someone realizes she is a warrior elf, and cornered, Ultron threatens to kill one of the elf children if she does not stop, forcing her to comply while calling him a coward. And in that instant, the protagonist appears behind Uldren using dimensional movement, striking him hard and knocking him out instantly, calmly telling the elf that although he said he would not help, she can relax because he will protect the girls, and with that she resumes fighting and finishes off the remaining kidnappers, rushing to the cage where the elf children are trapped, unable to find the key until the protagonist steps in and easily breaks the locks, freeing them and revealing the mana-devouring collars that prevented them from using magic, which she says will be hard to remove, but he offers to nullify the curse with his anti-curse spell and heals one of the injured elves, shocking her as she realizes he is far from an ordinary knight, and soon she calls a spiritual bird that reports 4 girls rescued and sends their location so help can arrive, explaining it is a spirit bird used to record and deliver messages, rare among humans and mainly used for elf communication, confusing him slightly as he compares it to a recorder or messenger pigeon. And when she questions who he really is after witnessing him use multiple complex magic types at once, he introduces himself as a traveling mercenary and presents Ponta as his companion, while she introduces herself as Ariani Glennis Maple, a warrior elf, thanking him sincerely for his help, though he brushes it off modestly. And when the bird returns with a message from Danka confirming the girls reached the Diento headquarters safely and requesting Ariani to return, she nods and asks the bird to relay another message, then asks the protagonist if he truly is a mercenary, and upon his confirmation, she decides to hire his services, extending her hand, which he accepts, asking whether her fellow elves will object to his presence, to which she admits some will, but it will not matter since he saved the children, and after agreeing, he uses his portal ability to move them to another area of the elf forest near the Lydell River, astonishing her as they spot the distant city of Diento, prompting him to suggest heading there before nightfall and mentioning they will meet another elf upon arrival, and later they are seen in an alley of Diento where Ariani pulls up her hood, explaining they will meet Danka, whom he imagines to be kind like her, only for Danka to arrive late and reveal himself as a serious-looking man, with Ariani reassuring him and introducing the protagonist as a mercenary ally, suggesting they talk elsewhere to avoid attention. And soon, they sit in a bar ordering food and drinks, where Ariani asks if he truly is not hungry, and he replies that that he is not and will not remove his helmet to avoid being attacked as Ariane introduces Danka Maple, prompting him to ask whether they are related, only for her to explain that elf names consist of a personal name, the parent's surname, and the clan name. As they sit inside the bar, Danka suddenly mentions something about the city they originally come from, and the protagonist understands the hint, asking what exactly he is investigating, but Danka ignores the question, choosing instead to focus on tasting the food and drinking his beer, and a moment later, he bluntly asks who this armored man really is, prompting Ariane to explain that the protagonist is a mercenary who helped her in the forest against the kidnappers and that he can use teleportation magic, and right then, Ponta appears, revealing himself clearly as a Ventu Vulpes, a fully spiritual creature, which makes Danka comment that someone who can use teleportation magic and also has a spiritual companion could be extremely useful, a remark that quietly pleases the protagonist, and soon Ariane asks whether Danka has gathered information about where the kidnapped elves are being held, to which he replies that he has, explaining they are confined inside a house located in the Red District, heavily guarded almost all the time, so the best plan is to wait until dawn to rescue them. And hearing this, the protagonist stands up and says he has some things to take care of and will return in about an hour, with Ariane agreeing and saying they will wait, and once he leaves, Danka asks Ariane if it is really wise to trust him, since it is unusual for her to rely on a complete stranger, but Ariane firmly replies that if it were not for him, she herself would have been captured already because she was deceived while trying to protect the girls. And although Danka argues that she would not have struggled much on her own, Ariane admits he is right, but also tells him that he still has a lot to learn, adding that the protagonist is not only strong, but also very young, which leads Danka to ask once again if trusting him is the right choice, and this time Ariane answers without hesitation that it is. And elsewhere, we see the protagonist walking through the streets with a bag full of coins after selling items taken from bandits, surprised at how well he was paid, deciding to buy plenty of food, then sitting quietly in an alley with Ponta to prepare a meal, while at the same time, a group of kidnappers is shown holding 4 elf girls who are to be moved to another location the next morning, and one of the elf girls boldly claims that their savior will arrive soon and kill them all. And later that night, Danka, Ariane, and the protagonist gather to prepare for the assault on the hideout, unaware that a ninja-like woman is following them from the rooftops, carefully observing their every move. And when the group arrives at the location, they notice several guards stationed at the front entrance and assume the same for the rear, leading Ariane to suggest that the protagonist use his teleportation magic to enter through a window, though they would normally need to move away to avoid being seen by the light of the magic circle. But the protagonist calmly says that will not be necessary and asks them to hold on to him, and in the next instant he uses dimensional movement to appear directly by the window, with Ariane checking the entry point and confirming it will be easy to enter from there, while Danka tells them to go ahead and stay cautious. And although Ariane struggles slightly to get through, the protagonist and Danka slip inside smoothly using teleportation, and once inside they begin searching carefully for the elf girls, only to realize something is strange when they discover several kidnappers already dead, their throats slit, which prompts them to split up, with Danka warning them to be careful, and the protagonist moves silently using dimensional movement to avoid making noise, until he reaches a locked door, peers through the keyhole, and teleports inside, only to find more slain bodies. And just as he processes this, he is suddenly attacked by the same girl who had been following them, and he reacts instantly, blocking her strike before the clash can escalate further. So friend, if you enjoy this anime and want next episodes, so don't forget to like and subscribe the channel for new videos.